So I'm just
I'll just go down the
whichever.
It's actually coming like a seat.
Yeah. Makes no difference to me.
All right. This is the best with snakes.
Shoot at the gavel the first time, for sure.
In fact, they made the
Oh, nice. Didn't hit it.
so you don't damage.
Don't damage the board.
I mean, it's like you
Put
can
it
go
away.
hit it.
That would be hard to miss that one.
We're ready when everybody else is. I guess I can go round people up.
Oh, we got council. I didn't realize half the days was still out there. Turn off that flashlight. There you go.
Okay, I'd like to start the regular council meeting from March 10th, 2022. Can we have roll call?
Mayor Young,
Here. Sorry, I'm gonna get used to that.
Here.
Councilmember Deambra,
Here.
Councilmember Brandon,
Here.
Councilmember Johnson,
Here.
and Mayor, we're going to need to do the invocation.
Right. Yeah, I got it. Okay. That or approval agenda first.
Invocation.
Okay, I'm doing the invocation tonight. So, dear Father, tonight we want to acknowledge and thank previous council members for their time and service to the village and welcome the new. We want to remind ourselves that our top priority and role is to always serve in the best interest of the village. Lastly, we want to send our deepest prayers and support to all those impacted by the events in Ukraine, especially the innocent, and let us never forget what it means to live our freedoms and how blessed we are to live in the United States of America. Amen. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is a presentation from the Public Safety Employee Pension Board.
Hey guys. This actually wasn't the presentation. Thank you. Good. All right, guys. Thank you. My name is Kris Cowles. I'm the speaker of the, what am I, the head of the board? I'm a member of the board of the pension. the Public Safety, Public Pension Board. I don't know exactly what the title is. But a couple things to go over tonight. This should be pretty easy. Some good news, some concerns that we really need to talk about and address, some that I made last year. I'm a volunteer, so sorry I didn't dress up, guys. But a couple things here. It doesn't work either way.
Just go down, click down.
Yeah.
Oh. Turn on. I'll click through it. I'll click through it until we get it figured out. Go ahead, Phil. Just give me the look.
There's really nothing on the first 3 slides, really. Really just we'll go over our last meeting that we had in February, provide the results of our actuarial report from last year, some projections, some changes that were made, etc. So last board meeting was February 7th, next one is May 2nd, so continue on to the next one. All right, good deal. So in our last meeting, we had Jennifer Gainfort present our performance report from last year. Good news, value was up just over $25 million in the fund. So that's a good thing. Significant increase over last year, obviously, as a result of good market performance. You know, there's some asset allocation numbers up there. These change every day. We made a few changes last year to bring the allocation back in line with what it should be. You know, nothing too dramatic, a few percent here and there. And also we have a couple of our managers that are, you good? A couple of managers that we have on watch just for some relatively poor performance relative to their peers, relative to their benchmarks. So, you know, we may elect to make a change in the coming year on 1 or 2 of our strategies. Made one change last year, but you know, as that happens, it's really a non-event, nothing too major. Our plan administrator tends to guide us in that stuff. Things to remember is us on the board, it's not our job to pick managers and manage the fund. Our job is to just make sure that we are staying in line with what we're supposed to do, following rules. So most of our strategies have done pretty well relative to their benchmark. Again, our job is not to take excess risk and try to outperform benchmarks. We are just trying to hit what our projected rate of return is, and that's something we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But you know, we've been relatively close with most of our strategies to our benchmark. So we're not trying to overperform and definitely don't want to underperform, because that would mean more bigger contribution necessary. Again, performance has been relatively close. I mean, I can go through each of these and go over what strategy and how close they were to the benchmark and things like that. But most of the time, we're within 1 or 2% of the benchmark over the stated period. So, you know, nothing really out of line there. A couple of the strategies that you'll notice have been underperforming was our global fixed income. We've got them on watch, as well as real estate. They've been underperforming their benchmark there. So I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but you know, 6 to 9% is only 3%, but in reality, that's 33% lower than what the benchmark is. So that's actually a big discrepancy there. So we may be making some changes in the months or years ahead. So good news is we are right around that 25% of all pension funds across the country. So doing pretty well. If you look at where the performance has been relative to the last 1, 3, 5 years and since inception, 27th, 23rd, 18th percentile over 5 years, which is very good. And then since inception, since the plan was started, 44th percentile. So top half. I like to think of pension, if you're right in the middle, 50%. A lot of people want to strive for the top 1%, but really, when we're doing our job, we want to be right in the middle. Couple things here that I really want to address. Some of this is something that I brought up last year. We had Jeff Ambrose deliver our annual actuarial evaluation, and the thing that he mentioned about our pension plan is that we are actually, compared to other pension strategies, we are rated better than excellent. So that's very, very good. Those of you who have been around a while probably know that some of the village's obligation for the contributions for the police department have been offset by a reserve account. And that includes a $239,518 contribution last year, which after that contribution leaves $512,000 and change in that account. So that's probably going to continue for the next 2 years. And then after that, the reserve account will no longer be there. So that's a contribution that will likely have to be made up by the village. So as you're working on your budgets for the future, I'm sure you're all aware that I ask that that's something that you consider. Okay. So otherwise, we're in pretty good shape. One thing that I want to add, I didn't mention it earlier when I showed the performance on those first couple of slides. Last year was a great year. Markets did great. Obviously, there have been some headwinds recently, especially over the last 2 weeks with the Russia-Ukraine war. We've seen a significant fall off in the value. So, you know, who knows what's going to happen in the next year. So next year when we do this, may not be so positive. So, you know, everything looks good right now. The contribution for the firefighter portion, 18.97%. So it's a little bit less, it's a lower percentage than last year. Again, that's based on the projections of the state contributions of 91,000 for the police and 193 for fire there. So, you know, those tend to, over the last couple of years that I've been on the board, those have been pretty close. Our projections have been pretty close, so it's enabled us to kind of project out what the contribution amounts would be. This next slide is something that I want to kind of talk about a little bit. You know, when we take the portion of that contribution being offset by the amount in the reserve account, the contribution rate relatively low, 10%. Great performance last year, resulting in an actuarial gain of $662,000. That's in excess of what our projected returns were. So that's a good thing. That's very, very good. It means less money potentially that the village would have to kick in for this because performance has been better than projections. So that bottom bullet point, though, is something that I want to talk about real quick. It says there have been no changes in the actuarial assumptions or methods. So when I came on the board, our projected rate of return was 7.25. Now that's after fees. We dropped that down to 7. Okay, so now our projected rate of return is 7%. Now, obviously these pension plans are built to or designed to live into perpetuity forever. You know, we've got people who are working and living and, you know, life expectancies that go on and on. So the projection determines, you know, the likelihood of how much money is going to be in the account in the future to make these pension obligation payments. I'm going to just kind of read this here so I can hopefully relay it in a manner that makes sense. The state recently commented that they would consider an assumption of 5.5% to 6.75% to be a reasonable expectation. So if the state is projecting a reasonable rate of return on pension assets of 5.5 to 6.75%, we are outside of that. So if we really just kind of think about what that means, if we have a high rate of return, it's projecting that we will have more money in the future, therefore less money that we need to put in. Now, they're not telling us that we have to bring our projections down to what they consider to be a reasonable assumption, but it may be something to consider. So 5.5 is obviously out of the question, but 6.75, if we were to change our assumptions down to within that range of reasonable, it would increase the contribution amounts. Okay, so, you know, they asked me last meeting, where should we do it? And I said no. So we're going to keep it where it is. But We may want to make a recommendation that we incrementally reduce that, maybe 10 basis points, 5 basis points, so that we get down to that 6.75 within a few years, so that it's not one big hit, okay? That's something to consider. With that being said, the FRS, the state, much larger pension, they use 6.8, okay? So just something to consider there. I'm open to input. Here's the good news. Currently funded ratio 104.9%, so we're overfunded. That was as of 9:30. Okay, we're not there today. We're below. It was 100.2 last year. So, that's saying the assumptions are reasonable. A couple reasons, obviously, that were there, primarily driven by market performance. All right. A couple other really just administrative matters. We made a few changes to the plan documents. There was a cancer presumption for payout for somebody, a police or fireman who has cancer as a result of their job. We changed the required minimum distributions. I mean, that happened for everybody. Changes to the ability of a service member to purchase service, really just administrative stuff that we were required to do by the state. Tax notice and the COVID bill. But other than that, it was a pretty good meeting. The fund is in good shape. We just have a couple of concerns that we probably want to address over the next couple of years. Questions?
Thank you, Kris. Any questions from council?
Yeah, I've got, well, 3. You made reference in here that the required rate of return in order to achieve the 7% objective is 7.25%. My recollection is that your fund expenses as a percentage of the total fund are quite a bit higher than that. So where did the 7.25 come from? Aren't your fund expenses more in the line in the neighborhood of 1.5?
No.
What are the total fund expenses at this time?
They're significantly lower than that. They're about 25 basis points.
Okay. Could you provide that information to us?
Yeah, I'll ask.
Because I know historically that has not been the case. So if that's true today, I'd like to be able to look at that.
To meet the assumptions, the fund needs to earn 7.25% before expenses to meet the
Right.
7% investment assumption. Now, I think it's probably,
Well, you've got the cost of administration, you've got the cost of your advisor.
yeah, it's not 1.5, I know that, but I know 25
You've
basis
got
points
the
also.
embedded costs within the funds themselves. I'd like to actually see that
Right, so
information.
typically the performance of the management cost of the managers is baked into that number. Other outside costs, the administration, the actuary, that tends to be about 0.25%. All right, so if you take everything together, you'd have to kind of back out those numbers to arrive at what that actual number is.
Well, if you could just provide us with that information, I would really appreciate that. The other thing you said is the goal is not to outperform. I was in the pension management business for 30 years. I never had anyone tell me that they didn't want us to try and outperform. Now, they don't want
Board's job isn't to outperform.
Well, but the people that you engage, your advisors and others, hopefully their job is to outperform, not just to carry the water at an equal basis. Now, I understand you don't want to take undue risk. I understand all that. But the people that are coming to you with the recommendations on the various managers for your funds, I would not be looking for them just simply to be mediocre. I would hope that the board would be looking for managers that, on a rational basis, have some reason to look to outperform as things go forward. So just that comment,
Your statement is very true. That's why we do have some managers that are on watch. That's why we made some changes. If they're in the bottom 50 percentile, I mean, there was a couple that were in the high 90s, 99th percentile. So we made changes. It's our obligation to make sure that we're hiring managers to do the right thing, manage the money effectively.
but as you said, is the better you perform, that eases the burden of costs on the village itself. So obviously, again, without taking undue risk, I would hope we would aspire to something more than just middle road. The other thing I wanted to ask you about is with what's happening, is you already referenced the situation with Russia, obviously, you know, we've got the Fed talking about increases in interest rates. So when we look at the bond portfolio, do you know what the current duration is, and do you know if they're taking steps to perhaps shorten the duration to reduce the risk of principal loss in the bonds?
Pretty much every manager is doing that. I mean, that's what they're paid to do. You know, they've been calling for interest rate increases for over a decade. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, I can sit here and I can pull out the report if you want. I mean, it would take me a
Well,
while.
yeah,
to figure out what our exact duration
I
was.
think in the past, we've actually gotten the report. So I would actually like to see the report, and I'd like to see the duration numbers, and I'd like to see, you know, how they're handling that situation, just for our standpoint. So,
Yeah, I mean,
okay.
you know, that's very doable. I mean, we get it every quarter, you know, where they're at. So
Okay.
that's why they're hiring. We're hiring now.
Okay, that's all I have. And just thank you for your
Sure.
efforts on behalf of, you know, our employees and the residents. We do appreciate the work, you know, that you guys do.
Thanks.
Chris, appreciate everything that you do. I think the comments that you made about being in the average was about the total since the inception of the plan, and that makes complete sense in my mind. Obviously, in the last 5 years, you guys have been in the 18th percentile, doing a great job. I think that maybe when you were there, the rate of return expectation was higher than 7.5, because when I got on, we lowered it to 7.5. So there's been this trend of continuing to get it lower and lower and lower. So I think the recommendation to lower it is a good one, and I think it's something that we should definitely think about doing, or at least I encourage you to keep moving on that path.
Yeah, we don't want it to be significant,
Correct.
but you know, we don't want to all of a sudden have this big surprise where there's a tremendous contribution obligation to be made.
Market's not going to continue to return 15, 12%, 20% on an annualized
Right.
basis. So we're at a good spot now within the plan, and I think we should be wise in maintaining that.
Yeah, I think it may be something that we can readdress next year.
Yeah.
Primarily because right now, hopefully that this Russia-Ukraine thing ends quickly, and then we can get back to some sense of normalcy.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately,
we don't want to make a knee-jerk reaction right now on something that could be, you know, months when we're
Correct.
looking at something
Agreed.
that's years and years and years.
unfortunately, geopolitical events are normal, and they will continue to happen throughout the lifetime of this plan.
Yep.
I do want to recommend to the council that, you know, that additional money that is in there for the fund that was part of that 215 account for the police department when they moved to the 401, out of the 401 and into the pension. This is the type of year that we should probably look into maybe utilizing more of it because of the pullback, if there is continued pullback, just to look at using that in the budget. Because there might be a larger contribution necessary.
We'll have to ask if that's something that they can do.
Yeah, we can.
They can.
We can. So that's the only thing I'd recommend putting forward. So again, thank you for your
Okay,
work.
thank you. Lori, I'm just gonna leave this here.
Any other comments from council?
No, you're good. You can leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We need to pull 3D because that's a duplicate from February's agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
I actually wanted to pull one thing, and it is G, so 3G.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Wait.
Aye.
Aye.
So, and just so I'm clear, D is being removed, not for consideration, it's being taken off the agenda because it was handled last month.
Correct.
And then you're pulling G for separate discussion. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any communications from citizens?
When do you want to?
Oh, do we want to talk about now or at the end of the regular?
I will
Talk it now.
leave
You
that
wanna
to
talk
the
about now?
council's discretion.
Okay.
I just wanted
Talk
to
about
get
now.
some public clarification on what is pertaining to.
So this is referring to the structure that's out there, I guess the old snack bar, the pavilion that's out there. I know Public Works did an assessment that they routinely do, I guess on an annual basis, found that there was quite a bit of rot to that facility. So we quickly engaged the engineer services to make sure it was structurally okay. They did analysis, and so that's what this particular item is that we authorize it. It's under $25,000. I have authorized that. The work has been done. The assessment's been done. The They offered a probable cost for that and some solutions for us.
Okay, so it's possible though in the near future, it'll be removed,
The plan for it, because it's, I would say almost 100% that there will not be a structure in our master plan that goes in that location. So there'd be no reason for us to put money back into that facility. We are working on getting a quote to demo that facility because that it is not, it doesn't have long left, lot of time left before it needs to be demoed and condemned.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, I just love the fact that we're working for an actual plan so that when these type of events happen, we don't put money back into something that's not necessarily needed. So I think it's great.
Nothing for me.
Thanks, Doug.
Glad I could be helpful.
Good night.
So I'll make a motion that we approve G under the consent agenda under 3G.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on, communications from citizens, Lori?
We have Johnny Collins.
You all look absolutely wonderful. It's like the best looking council I've ever seen. I just wanted to share with you guys, Police Chief Gus Medina asked me to join what's called TRAC, is Tequesta Residents Action Committee. And I found it just an amazing group of 12 citizens around Tequesta to actually promote what the police force is doing. So when I grew up, I watched Adam 12 and Chips, and as a kid I would, smile at the police officer, and they're so friendly and just somebody I can talk to and look up to as a mentor. And now the police force is very intimidating to me, and I'm an adult, I'm not 10 anymore. Just their look and their overall, they never smile. It's very serious, and I think it's a shame when we look at over where we are in America with how citizens perceive the police force and then how the police force deals with their citizens. So the police force for me is protect and serve. I think the serve part has been missing, at least recently in the past decade. And what Police Chief Medina has brought in is these citizens that all are in different parts. So I'm in Tequesta Oaks. I asked the police chief to come out and speak at our HOA meeting, which is at the end of the month, March 30th, and share the programs that you guys offer as far as the police force, which are amazing. The SAFE program that we all didn't know about. If you have dementia or Alzheimer's, or if your child has autism, let's put you on record. So when we come across a child that has autism, we're gonna handle them in a different way. That program is amazing to me. They have this other program when you're to go away for a week, sign a form, we're gonna come by and check your building or your house or something like that. A lot of our citizens, at least in Tequesta Oaks, didn't know there was. So I've been talking to a lot of my neighbors about what the police force does here for their citizens, and they're like, we never knew anything about this. So I was like, this is why Police Chief did this, and we need to get it out. And I said in the meeting, I said, this needs to go national. Like, I'm from Philadelphia, I just came down from New York City, and I work with the New York City Police Department and their outreach community programs. And like, for a large city to say, well, that's such a, country thing to do, a citizens community, committee. No, that's exactly what we need in New York City and in Philadelphia, with all the diversity is there, and just have somebody in the Latino community, the Asian community, the Irish community, the German community, to reach out and say, this is what the police force is doing. We're friends, we're in this together. So I just wanted to share what we're doing with TRAC. We have another meeting at the end of the month, I believe, as well. So we're gonna meet twice a month, at least in the beginning, and be able to share what the police force is doing. I think it's absolutely wonderful. I would love for it to go in a national standpoint once it gets started, and I just wanted to share what we're doing. So, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I don't have any more. I have one for item 15.
Okay.
You've got Harold.
Harold Taylor, 13 Chapel Court. I have a quick question. We pulled a couple of items off the consent agenda, but I can't remember you approving it as amended. You need to vote on the consent agenda.
I did.
You did? Thank you.
Okay, next up, communications from council. Start with you, Mr. Johnson.
My first communication. Thank you for being here for it.
My name's Aaron Johnson. I've been a resident here in DeQuesta for almost 10 years. I came to DeQuesta because I accepted a position with the DeQuesta Police Department back in 2011. Fell in love with the area. I grew up down in Pompano Beach, about an hour south of here, and decided immediately this is where I want to raise my family. So we moved up here while I was still a police officer, and I always had a plan to own a business, do something like that, and I fortunately was afforded the opportunity to do that. So I left the police department a couple of years ago, almost 3 years, and started a business down in West Palm Beach. I always knew, even as a police officer, this is something that I wanted to do at some point once I was not a police officer, just a resident. I didn't think it would be this soon, but I gotta be honest, I missed immediately being involved in the inner workings, the fundamentals, if you will, of DeQuesta. So I really jumped at the opportunity to do this. You know, you hear people say all the time how much they love living here, and I can't say anything more to that except I really love living here. This place means a lot to me, and I'm honored to sit on this council, and I'm going to do my absolute best to represent my friends and neighbors and residents of this village as best I can. I look forward to the next 2 years, and again, I honestly can't put into words how honored I am to be sitting up here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mrs. Brandon?
Awesome. Very nice. My only advice for any new council member is never to be afraid to ask questions, and that not all 5 of us know everything and are magically wizards in every department, so always utilize all of us and staff, and again, always ask questions so we can digest and break through everything and find answers for our residents. The EAC did meet yesterday. They did come to a conclusion, which is very exciting because they've been discussing it for a while. They voted unanimously to put forward a recommendation, which will be coming to Jeremy at some point, to have a part of the DRC, a checkbox for environmental aspects for everything that comes through the village. So that way the village is being held accountable, looking at every project, making sure it's environmentally friendly the best it can be. And that is all.
Thank you. Mr. D'Ambra?
I want to welcome Aaron to the council.
Thank you.
We're glad to have you here, and I want to congratulate Kyle and again Molly and as your selection as mayor and vice mayor. I know you guys are going to do a great job. Beyond that, actually, I don't have anything else this evening, so I'm going to pass the torch to the vice mayor.
So, again, welcome, Aaron. Thank you. Look forward, and congratulations.
Thank you. Okay. I had one thing. I actually had the pleasure of joining DeQuesta Fire Rescue along with some other fire and police departments from the area during a portion of their training with Dive Rescue International on February 24th. While I was there, the instructor pulled me aside and he said that he was impressed with the entire group, but 2 of the firefighters, John Costio and Kris Chance, went above and beyond all aspects to ensure that the training experience was well organized and really comprehensive for all involved. So I just want to make sure they were both recognized for their efforts. That's all I have. Okay, moving on to standing reports.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, congratulations, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson suffered through my orientation with the village clerk a few weeks ago. I have provided each of you an updated legal update memo, which includes all of the most important legal aspects of serving as an elected official, the form of government, sunshine law and public records, ethical considerations, voting conflicts, gift disclosures, that sort of thing, how to, the difference between a quasi-judicial proceeding and a legislative act. If you have any questions about that, as always, you know how to get a hold of me. Please don't hesitate. If the council would like me to make a verbal presentation on this at some future meeting, by all means, I'm happy to do that. Sometimes I've done it, sometimes haven't, so you let me know. I'm happy to accommodate whatever you want on that. Other than that, just to let you know, I was privileged to be able to participate in our Citizens Summit. Very briefly, I was able to make a brief presentation on the opening night, and what an amazing program that is. So I think that's something new to be really proud of. That was good stuff. So I will leave my report at that unless anybody has any questions for me. The one thing on my memo, and you'll see it's in red colored font because it is a potential significant impact to each of you as well as the manager. There is some legislation that's working its way through that has to do with the financial disclosure that each of you are required to file every year. And if this bill passes, it would require you, instead of filing the Form 1 financial disclosure, to file the Form 6 full financial disclosure, which is the document that constitutional officers and county commissioners have to file, and it is a significantly more invasive document than the Form 1. So keeping an eye on that, and it certainly is something you need to be aware of. So I will conclude my report with that.
Okay, thank you. Jeremy?
So on Tuesday night, we started with the Parks Master Plan. We have some renderings or some concepts. We've had a pretty good turnout. We will leave the boards, and we have a survey out in the lobby. It'll be out there until the 28th of March. And then once we get all those surveys, we'll combine it and hopefully come up with one concept. Was going to mention the Police Resident Action Committee, but I think that's been covered. I will, and I don't know if he'll cover it, but Chief Medina has been elected to be the Vice President of the Palm Beach County Police Association, so congratulations to him for that, I think. Also, and I'll steal a little bit of his thunder, they are working on getting accreditation for the police department. That is coming up at the end of April. He can probably go into more detail on what's needed for that. The Resident Academy, we're through week 6 of 8, so we got one more week, and then we will have a graduation ceremony for that group. And it is an amazing program. We've got very good participation, and I believe our staff's even having a little fun with it too. So the charrette process, as most of you guys know, they've started doing interviews with folks. The actual charrette will begin April 9th, and it'll consist for 5 days. And with that, that's my report.
Question with the Residence Academy, are we going to do that again?
Yeah, the plan is to do it annually, so we'll tee that off again, like December, start taking people. I know there's already people lined up to sign up and looking for the next one, so give us a little bit of a break. It's some staff time to put that together. So
I have one quick question on the grant tracking spreadsheet. I know you guys are looking into the Build Better America grant list. As you identify the ones you're looking into, can you add those to the spreadsheet just so we're all aware of what you guys are doing?
I think we have a meeting set up next week with one of the grant writers who have been tracking that for us. We passed that on to them because there's a number of grants in that Build Back Better program. So they're looking through it, and we're going to have a meeting with them to, I think next week. Was that the meeting next Tuesday? Mr. Chambers just set that up. So we will do that. Any of them that we start to go after, we'll include that.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? No. Okay, moving on to Chief Medina.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Village Manager, Village Attorney, and Village Clerk. So for the month of February, we conducted a few things. We conducted a community walk with Tessa McKay, like I have been telling you all in regard to her position. We've walked all the businesses in the village of Tequesta, given some information out there, her new position and what she's looking to do with the businesses. As the manager said and Johnny said, the track is coming along very well. We're getting some good reception. We've designated 12 people throughout the village, different areas in the village. And honestly, they're basically our ambassadors, getting the message out there. We offer so much that people don't know. I mean, and Mike Morrow, who's a former officer here, said the closed homes have been here since he was here, and you'd be surprised how many people didn't know when we had the conversation. So we have to do a better job of communicating and getting that out there. So, you know, we've reached a lot of people, different means. Mr. Bradford is also part of that committee as well. So we're looking at other means to get that information out there. So with their help, they're all enthusiastic. Honestly, I think we'll be successful in that regard. We assisted with food trucks this month. Accreditation, like the manager said, will be, right now it's tentatively scheduled for April 26th to the 28th. We'll have 3 assessors in the village, and it will be going everything that, you know, we've been working up to this point. So Jeff Owens has been meeting with us once a week at least once a week, and we continue to go through that process. I've done some mock assessment thus far, one, and we have another one coming up, so we're moving along on that. The bike rodeo, as the manager kindly pointed out to me, this month is Bicycle Month for Florida, so we will be doing the bike rodeo March 26th from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Tequesta First Baptist. It should be a great time. We have a lot of things going. We literally started working on it, I want to say yesterday. We're almost up to par. I'm reaching out to a few businesses, see if they'll donate some bikes. I have a few people that said in the past that they would donate bikes. You know, we always like to raffle off at least 6 bikes to the residents and to the kids. As Mayor Young knows, we went to Harvey Academy. They were having issues with speeding along the side over there on Main Street, so we actually went out there, even though Main Street's ours, you know, the side road is obviously private. We gave them some recommendations on how to better keep the kids safe, basically where the kids should come out of, and the vehicles were actually coming on the opposite side. We explained to Ms. Harvey, you know, what our plans were, and she was very thankful and very grateful for that. Also had an opportunity to talk to the kids. They were excited about the civics aspect of it. They wrote a letter to the council, which in turn came to the manager and myself, and then we addressed it. So they were quite happy. They were very receptive to that. In regards to the meeting, the usual Palm Beach County Traffic Safety Meeting, accreditation. We're preparing, just so everyone knows, as the manager said, I'll be the vice president. Thursday, we'll be swearing in, and we're working on the summer conference, Chiefs Association Summer Conference, which will be held in Palm Beach Gardens, August 6th through the 10th. So right now, we're working on that. Also met with Chief Smith of Juno Beach, just going over a few things. And of course, our usual Palm Beach County Chiefs of Police meeting. The Bureau of Land Management, as you all know, we have a contract with them. For the month of February, we had 143 contacts, and that was from 42 hours worked. Obviously, that's reimbursed back to the village. The Marine Unit for the month of February, 23 hours worked, 27 contacts, 2 vessel stops, and 2 warnings. In regards to training, Sergeant Blanc actually will finish tomorrow, which I'm very proud of him, the FBI VITA trilogy. It's composed of 3 different sections: supervisory, command, and executive leadership. That's what he's going through right now. He'll be done tomorrow. So, you know, with that, I believe all my sergeants are FBI leader. Next, we'll be moving it on to the corporal and then passing it on down, make it accessible to everybody. Corporal Baldwin has done a great job. He's putting together a dive team for us. We conducted a swim test last week, and he's putting that together. Thanks to the fire department, fire chief actually donated some of the equipment that we already had, so it won't be as much the resources that we need. And looking forward, we'll probably look at other means, you know, to be able to pay for that. Which reminds me, Mike Loney is doing a phenomenal job, as you all know, and we're looking for another deposit that's about to come soon. It has cleared all the bureaucracy and all that, so we're looking at possibly another $90,000 within the next week or 2 for his hard work. In fact, this week he also hit on a $125,000 job that the suspect in the case turned over all ownership of the money, so the process will move a little quicker. DUI training officer Palmieri, Jerry Lynn, attended interviews and interrogations. Corporal Tom Jarrell, license plate recognition training has gone out to all the personnel in the department. And that's my report.
If I can just have you maybe elaborate a little bit, sorry, Molly, just a little bit on, I know we've talked about the span over the bridge and the boat traffic that's going to be hindered a little bit. Can you just maybe share with the group some of the steps we're taking to try to help?
So Chief Dave England and I have been in steady contact since, as you all may not know, Brightline is doing some work underneath the US 1 bridge. So we're worried about in regards to the east and the west side of the water. So Our primary discussions, what we're saying, we're gonna enact mutual aid among us. We will take the east side, and that's still being discussed, and Jupiter will take the west side. We're currently looking for a dock, if any resident has, and I've spoken to Councilwoman Brandon about it, anyone that's not using a slip, just to be able to put the police boat there in the interim. It begins in April. To be honest, it's changed a few times from its initial schedule to now. The initial was starting in April into the end of May, starting at 7 p.m. to, I'm gonna say 6 a.m. And Chief Emily and I both agree, and we're trying to reach out to them to get them to agree to let it be until sunset at least, where they commence, on those days. But I will tell you that 3 of the days in May, right before Memorial Day weekend, they're looking to close it down completely. So that's something, I know it has to be done, but we're putting things in place with us and Jupiter, obviously with our great relationship that we have with Chief Emily and his staff, to make sure that we're all on the same page and mutual aid is in effect, and we're able to assist each other. But we're still talking. In fact, I spoke to Dave this afternoon, and we're playing phone tag with the PIO lady from Brightline. So we're just waiting on a call back. But she said it's a work in progress. They're kind of changing. FWC gave some recommendations on how to change things, but we just want to get confirmation before it gets put into place. But once it does, obviously I'll push it up through the manager and let everyone know, and let everyone put the message out there, because it is going to be somewhat of a inconvenience, to say the least. So
You can say nightmare, it's okay.
Major.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah,
Yeah, go ahead.
license plate recognition training. Can you give me a real brief summary? What does that entail?
it's just, so for accreditation purposes, we have to do, it's just what you're reading, what the tags mean, when it lights up red, is it a suspended license, unlicensed, whatever it may be, and then for us to look at it further, just being able to recognize, saying that they're being trained in it, so.
Okay,
Because,
so-
it doesn't automatically mean that there's a warrant, because, you have to verify, is it the person who's driving, is it not the person who's driving, so you have to do that.
Thank you. That's what I was going to ask. That's, I understand, an expired tag, a tag that's not registered, but when it comes to the suspended license, right, we have to actually observe that that's the person driving that, so that's what they're being trained.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Question. When we go back to the boat concept, I really appreciate you actually having those conversations with Jupiter, because we obviously are very heavy, especially in this season of spring and the glorious weather and the boating traffic.
Yes.
Do you know if the sheriffs are participating with putting a boat up here?
I'm sure they will. Chief McCarthy has a great relationship with Vinny, the lieutenant who runs their unit. We'll double check. We'll touch base with them. We'll plug them into our conversations. They're usually out there, but we'll plug them into that conversation, because they'll be a big help as well.
I only bring that up again because I'm not sugarcoating it. There's so much boat traffic on that plan that Brightline is asking for, to squeeze everybody underneath that bridge within 2 different hour limits it's gonna be a lot of safety issues.
No, absolutely.
Hopefully they don't miss it on the way back.
And that's my other concern, like what if somebody does miss it on the way back?
Yep.
That's not your department, that's just a,
I do have a question with, I think you said around 20-something hours that the marine boat was in the water
Yes.
last month. What's the plan going forward in the summer? Obviously, during this time period, you might be a little more, but after that, what's the plan during the summer?
Right, so once the activity gets a little more, then while they're on shift, we have someone that's certified on that shift, we'll put someone out there, for additional, just ensuring that we have enough coverage on the road, obviously, but we'll definitely go there. But the good thing is, like I said, we do have additional people, that personnel that are just able to get on the boat, God forbid it's an emergency.
As needed. Yeah, I'm more speaking more for the weekend.
Weekend, we up until recently, we had Manatee that was covering up until the end of March, so we've been out there every weekend, because I see on Facebook, Mike Boney's been taking the bulk of that, being out there with Eric, but we do have coverage. We also have with BLM, some of that will be boat hours, so it's a matter of utilizing that way it doesn't come from the PD, side of it, it's under BLM, and we'll be on the boat in the area, so.
Okay. All right, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, next, Chief True.
Usually that's me. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, Village Attorney, and would be the clerk, but she stepped out. So the fire department, obviously we're still attending the food truck rallies. We are planning to attend the bike rodeo here at the end of the month, and additionally to that, we are also planning an open house probably sometime in May. I'd like to tie it into hurricane preparedness, so you can expect to see something from us on that. The personnel announcements, we did have one firefighter resign and join Palm Beach County Fire Rescue. So we also welcomed a new firefighter on March 1st. Martin Fitzpatrick joined us at that point. Went through our 3 days of orientation training and is now working on shift. The department training, the mayor already alluded to, on February 22nd, 23rd, and 24th, we hosted Dive Rescue International. This is becoming something we're hoping we can do on a regular basis, at least annually. By hosting, we obtain sponsorships for some of our firefighters to go through at no charge to the village. So we're hoping to be able to continue that process. In this case, they received training for specifically their air systems in case they have to dive down, and get people out of the water. On March 2nd, our paramedics went through pediatric advanced life support. That's something we do every couple of years. We've been doing that for certainly as long as I've been EMS, was the EMS coordinator back in the day. On March 7th, we participated at Palm Beach Gardens for a quarterly training drill. We were part of 6 different fire companies that were there. And this is also becoming pretty routine, part of our automatic aid agreement with coverage here provided by Palm Beach County Fire and Rescue while our guys are there training. Specifically what they went over there was roof rescue operations, which actually ties right into something we're going to push pretty hard next year because of the new trucks that Council so graciously approved back in November. So back in November, we approved 2 new fire trucks. So my team of the vehicle committee, David McGovern, Lieutenant, firefighter Jason Fawcett, and firefighter Kris and myself traveled to Ohio between February 28th and March 3rd. We met with Sutphen Corporation and South Florida Emergency Management. We basically went through the trucks line by line and made sure we get what we want, what we're paying for. It was a tremendous experience. You can sit in a conference room, discuss options, and in most cases walk right out onto the floor and see how they're building it and see what one change at the front of the truck does to the back of the truck and so forth. So a tremendous learning experience, I think, for our younger firefighters. And that provides succession planning, if you will, for the future of Augusta Fire Rescue, as well as a thorough understanding of what it takes to actually build one of these trucks. We have 2 additional trips up to Ohio later towards next year. There'll be final inspection trips. By then the trucks will be done. So the news I'm sure some of you are waiting for me to say is, when will we get them? So what Sutphen has told me so far is that we should see the aerial in Florida sometime in March. So that's the ladder truck. Now it will go to the West Coast initially, where they will actually bracket, and this is where South Florida emergency equipment comes in. They will actually bracket and attach the various pieces of equipment that we have with the purchase. So we should see it here in April. Back to the training that we talked about. We are already scheduling, we obviously have in-house training that we will do with this truck. Sutphen will provide some training with this truck. We are also taking the additional steps of planning for outside companies to come in and give us additional training just on ladder operations, just to improve that specific skill set. The engine will arrive approximately 4 months after the ladder truck arrives. So right now, if we're on schedule, that would mean we would receive both trucks next fiscal year. If for any chance there is a delay, we have the potential of the engine rolling over into October, November of 23. So that would be the following fiscal year. But I'm confident. I'm feeling pretty good about this. The meetings went really well, and I think our team did an outstanding job. And I think everybody in this room is going to be very impressed at the trucks when they arrive. And without hitting it too hard, this really does set up the fire department as far as vehicles and equipment for the foreseeable future. So that's a huge, huge win for not just the fire department, but for the village of Tequesta. And I'm not going to bore you tonight with COVID information. I'm not going to bore you with how many meetings I went to. Say it safe to assume, though, we go to the same meetings. We go to training officers' meetings and so forth. So that will conclude my report, unless there are questions.
Is this the first time that Tequesta Fire has gone and taken part of the build in person?
No, that's pretty routine. There's always a pre-build meeting at the site. We did it when we built the ambulance a couple years ago, and if I go back to 2013 when the last engine was built, our teams went up there then as well. How it was done in 2013, that I don't recall because I wasn't the chief then. But I can tell you the way we operated this time, these guys aren't just picked by random. You know, I asked for input from our firefighters and our officers. They created a vehicle committee. I asked them to look into anything that has to do with ladder trucks, towers, quints, engines. Give me the best possible options to bring to council. So once we get past that point, we've pretty well gone line by line through all these trucks. Now it's just a question of bringing that team up to Ohio and going through it again with the people that are building the trucks. When you're in these meetings, you're sitting across from not just the guys that are looking at the contracts, but the engineer that built the truck is there. And that's, if you're not familiar with Sutphen Corporation, this is a family-owned and operated business since 1890. I've talked to several Sutphens while I was there. I talked to the engineer who's been the engineer specifically on ladder trucks for the last 35 years. He built our truck that's sitting in the bay right now. So the quality, craftsmanship of what they do there, they only build 400 or 500 trucks a year. That's not a huge number. So they take a lot of pride in what they put out there. So you're getting a very top quality truck.
Oh, bravo, that seems like that should be the way it's done. So. 2 more meetings, you say?
2 more what?
Two more trips planned?
There's 2 more trips, so there'll be 1 for the ladder truck, there will be 1 for the engine.
Okay, thank you.
Let me add, there'll be another trip to the west coast of Florida, but that won't be nearly as spectacular. They do have to bolt the things on in the right spots, so we will send people for that.
I'm going to ask a question concerning the color.
Yes.
Getting 2 trucks, is this a time to look at maybe a different color?
The way I understand colors and schemes is I would have to bring that back to council. So if council would like me to do that, I could certainly bring you options. Because we're buying 2 trucks, yes, now would be the time to make changes. We would have to do something to address the other trucks in the fleet if we did that. And there would be a cost associated with that.
Just throwing it out there.
Just to clarify, there was action taken by council previously,
Yep.
and they designated colors and logos, and any changes to those, council would have to approve those. And so if it's the will of the council, we can bring it up and you guys can vote on it, but previous council had already made that action.
Currently, it's just the way you see it. So same color, same stripe pattern, everything's the same because, again, we would need council authorization to make a change.
Does anyone else have any desire to do that so we can have Jeremy put on an upcoming workshop?
I don't mind the discussion. If we go down that route and we get information as backup, I would like to have the history on the logo with it.
I'll give you a quick history on the logo. The actual Tequesta Fire Rescue logo that you see on the patch was actually drawn by Chief Winans' daughter in 1993. That's where the logo comes from.
As far as color goes, I just assumed when it was changed that there was some data backing that, more visible, and
So
if there's more data, and it's certainly something to look at. If not, no.
Okay, so
I'll
Frank,
give you-
I just want to, so I don't know if it's appropriate to discuss it now. I just want to kind of get a poll if we want to talk about it in the future. Frank?
I guess I'd have to understand what the rationale would be to change it. I mean, if there's some some strong basis, kind of what Aaron's alluding to, that says a different color would increase visibility or something of that nature, that's fine, but if it's just a change for change's sake, then I would just as soon stay with what we have.
I assume stay with what we have, so.
I have no basis, I just thought it'd be worth talking about.
Okay. I think maybe we'll table it for now.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right,
So was
thanks.
there any consideration to bring it back? It
I don't
sounded
think
like it
so.
was kind of not really a desire, like there's no immediate thing,
Not-
so.
not really.
Okay, just making sure.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Chief. All right, moving on to utilities, Matt.
Good evening. Mr. Johnson, welcome, and
Thank you.
Mr. Stone, congratulations. Just a couple of quick updates. The well rehabilitation project is to date been extremely successful. Well number 3, which is the one behind Village Hall here, they're looking to wrap that up and mobilize over to well number 4, which is the one by the public service facility, the Bridge Road, next week. And we are on track to meet the request by our neighbors over at Good Shepherd to have that this yellow piping out before all their Easter services. So we're pushing them hard for that, and we're on track to have that out of there by then. The only other thing that I have to share is we have 3 new team members join our department. Miss Lisa Conti, you'll see her smiling face up at the front counter. She joined as customer service representative 2. We had Chance Fell join as a water treatment plant trainee, and Stephen Canning joined as administrative generalist on the last since last meeting. So that's all I have to share. Happy to answer any questions.
No question, but thank you for making that well project as quick as possible, because we were all experiencing it. Thank you.
I have one comment, one question. For everyone who walks the trail at the Questa Park, they were really happy to see that trail cut and cleared, which has made it eminently more walkable for everybody. So I think you and Doug, I guess, were the architects of that, so thank you very much. The only other question I had was when we look at the year-to-date revenue, how much of that, we've had a pretty dry season. How much of that is dry season and how much of that is the new meters, which, we had talked about, the greater accuracy and capturing lost revenue? What do you attribute that increased revenue to at this point?
So the largest contributor is year to date. We had a big dip in demand, November and December of last year, and so those the revenues from these current first 5 months of the fiscal year have been back to our demand has been back to normal, and so the biggest contributor to that jump that you see is we're back to normal on those demand where we had those 2 big dips in November and December last year. The next biggest contributor would be the rate increases, which are in about the 3 to 4% range once averaged over. Those are the 2 biggest contributors.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Sorry, I have one question. If you did. On your notes about a temporary decline in compliance percentage, I see the chart here. I guess I was just curious, what percentage should we be in for compliance?
100 is what we want to get to.
Okay, good to know.
But as we add on more devices into our system and into our database for compliance, then that drives our percentage down until we get. So we're kind of in a growing phase on that. It's our backflow, our cross control policy or program, and so as we get these, as we work on getting devices added into the database, and then that brings our percentage down until they come into compliance. So, but in a perfect world, 100, realistically, we're going to be, realistically, once things settle out, in the 90s.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on to the regular agenda. Old business, item number 8 is ordinance number 02-22, second reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0222, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of Tequesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 78 zoning, Article 9 supplemental regulations, Division 2 site plan review, Section 78-331 required development standards, required facilities and infrastructure. And at Chapter 78, Article 10 off-street and on-street parking and loading regulations, Section 78-691 minimum standards. To clarify parking and sidewalk requirements generally and for certain overhang areas, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date, and for other purposes. This is second reading.
Good evening. Congratulations, Madam Mayor. Congratulations, Councilmember Johnson and our Vice Mayor Stone. This is the second reading, and as you recall, on the first reading, the council suggested some minor changes and clarifications. So we did so, and the clarification was with regard to improvement and maintenance by the owner. So basically, in sidewalks, what does the owner of the lot does? So that was the clarification that we were needing. And in this case, we specifically says that shall only apply to those sidewalk pressure washing or cleaning activities that are initiated by the property owner on a non-recurring or recurring basis. The question was, what the property owner of the lot will do with regard to the sidewalk, and it's only maintenance in terms of these specific requirements. So that's the clarification that was included on this ordinance.
Okay. Any comments from council? Okay. Any public comments? Okay. Make a motion.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, the next item 9, I believe, needs to be pulled from the agenda because we didn't get a letter from the state.
That's correct. We, before we can adopt this comprehensive plan amendment on second reading, we have to get the results of the state's review of the ordinance, and we have not gotten that yet. So this needs to be removed from tonight's agenda. My recommendation would be that allow staff to re-advertise and put it on the agenda when it's available. That may not be for a few months, depending on how long it takes the state to do its job.
Okay, do you have to make a motion to remove it?
Yes, please.
No? Do I? Okay, can I make a motion?
Motion made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 10, resolution number 10-22.
Good evening and congrats, Mayor Young, Vice Mayor, again, congrats, and Councilmember Johnson, I welcome you to the council.
Thank you.
The item before you essentially is the proposed revision to the village's investment policy. The current policy has been in existence since 1995, and since that time there has been significant changes in the state statute regarding investments of public funds. And so what this current revision seeks to do is the following. It will update continuing education requirements for the finance director and appropriate village staff within the finance department regarding the investment of village funds. Secondly, it will provide clarifying language on authorized investment institutions and dealers. It will update maturity and liquidity requirements of qualified investments. It will provide greater clarification on authorized investments and portfolio composition. It will also provide specific performance benchmarks for the village's short and long-term portfolio. And lastly, it's going to provide a glossary of cash and investment management terms. In a nutshell, the current policy has some significant constraints. For instance, the maturity requirements there is a requirement in the current policy that states that at any given point, 80% of the portfolio has to mature within 1 year. That's significantly out of bounds with the current best practices. Most investment policy allow for an average maturity of 5.5 years. Another section of the policy limits the composition of investments to government, treasury, U.S. treasuries and instrumentalities and commercial paper, and it doesn't allow the staff to go outside of the bounds of those investments. The proposed policy expands on the permissible investments to include corporate notes, munis, some of the other instruments that will enable us to earn a higher rate of return. But, excuse me, in a nutshell, our main goal has always been and will also remain safety, liquidity, and yield. So we feel that this new policy will enable us to achieve those objectives while increasing the investment earnings within the village. I'm available for any questions that you might have.
And I apologize, I probably need to recuse myself on this.
Yeah, I don't have any questions for you, but I know this is your last meeting with us, and I just wanted to thank you for your service to the village and to the residents. It's been a pleasure to work with you, and just to wish you all the best as you move forward with your career. So thank you for your time here.
Mayor, with your permission, Mr. Stone, if you have a voting conflict, you need to, if you can announce the nature of that conflict and verbally tonight, and then you'll have to fill out the voting conflict form that'll be appended to tonight's meeting minutes as well.
It's possible that myself or my firm could receive a financial benefit from this.
Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Council Member D'Ambra, Mayor Young, Vice Mayor, I just would like to likewise thank you for your just overwhelming support during my tenure here. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the village manager. I would like to thank him as well for just simply giving me the opportunity to work in such a, or for such a fantastic municipality. And I just have to digress a bit to just state the class in which, or the classy manner in which the new mayor was elected was so reflective of what a first-rate municipality you are, and I will certainly miss, my association with you, and I thank you, Bob.
So Hugh, I wanted to thank you. You were such a refreshing addition when you came into our team. You're so knowledgeable and you're always prepared. And you never shy away from when council has questions. Even if you don't have the answer right away, you were always so eager to find us the answers, and I thank you for that. And you will forever be the money man to me. Every time.
I'd just like to thank you, Hugh, for your service to the village here as well, and we will miss you greatly. I know you helped me a lot when I joined council. We had many meetings to help me understand the budgets, how, the cost reports and all that stuff. So you've been extremely helpful and supportive for me too, so thank you. Okay, any public comments? Nope, okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to adopt.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. All right, next agenda item 11, approval of non-resident recreation center membership fees. Greg?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I was sitting back here thinking to myself, maybe my daughter someday that grows up in DeQuesta, that grew up on Chapel Lane, ends up becoming the mayor. It's like a storybook, it's really neat. So congratulations and welcome, Aaron.
Thank you, Greg.
And congratulations, Kyle. Yes, the item on the agenda for tonight is to discuss the non-resident pricing. Jeremy and I went back, we talked about this, and we came up with 3 different options that you see before you. We took everyone's recommendations that you made from last time, and we went back and came up with something I think, I hope is doable.
Okay. Any comments from council?
So I'd like to move forward with option 3. That's just where I stand.
And I would like to move forward with option 1. As I've said, I think the way I view my responsibility is to the residents first. And I am fine with being a good neighbor, but I do think non-residents, if they're going to come in and use the facility, from a financial standpoint, they should be on an equal footing, not a better footing than residents. And I think, option 1 reflects an appropriate cost for utilizing this facility if you're a non-resident. So I'm going to be in favor of option 1.
I can go, yeah, do we have to take a motion?
Well,
Or a consensus?
Does anyone have any other comments? Or can everyone discuss it?
Well, council, you guys can do this, generally however you want. If you get a motion, at least on the floor on one of them, if you get a second, then you can just sort of frame the discussion around the motion. Otherwise, you may be kind of shotgunning it. But
Okay,
my
so
recommendation would be to have a motion at least to frame. And if there's a second, then the discussion can be framed around that.
Yeah, I would like to make a motion that we approve option 1.
Any seconds?
Motion dies for lack of a second.
Number 9 dies, okay.
Motion for option 3.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
No.
3-2.
3-2? Did you get the vote, Madam Clerk?
Yeah, I have Molly and Frank in opposition.
Okay, any public comment? I guess we should have done that first. Nope, but there's not any, so, all right, moving on. New business, item number 12, ordinance number 07-22, first reading.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0722, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of DeQuesta, Florida, amending Chapter 62, Planning and Development at Article 4, Adequate Facilities and Concurrency Management, Division 1 generally, by revising Section 62-92, Level of Service Standards, and Chapter 66, Subdivisions, Article 5, Design Standards, Division 1 generally, by revising Section 66-161, General Standards, Level of Service Standards, to update storm event definitions and require compliance with Stormwater Management Practices Manual, also amending Chapter 66 at Article 6, by renaming Section 66-334 as Stormwater Management Practices Manual and Storm Drainage and Stormwater Management Facilities, to authorize the creation of a Stormwater Management Practices Manual to be adopted and amended by resolution, and further amending Chapter 78 zoning at Section 78-331, required development standards, required facilities and infrastructure, and Section 78-693, paving of parking spaces, obstructions in parking area, and Section 78-835, minimum requirements, all to update storm event definitions and require compliance with Stormwater Management Practices Manual, providing that each and every other section and subsection of Chapter 62 and Chapter 78 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, and Chapter 66. Providing conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify an effective date and for other purposes. This is first reading. It was an exceptionally complicated title. Good luck, Mr. Hammond, on trying to bring this in for a lady.
I'm not gonna lie, I was actually looking forward to watching you have to read all 21 of those lines, Keith. All right, so this item is related to Strategic Initiative SE1. And I have just a couple quick slides that were presented to the Environmental Advisory Committee to walk through it very quickly with you as well. The driving force or the nexus for the Stormwater Manual, which again was a strategic initiative of the Council, was to help improve our new developments in the building so that we're building smarter. We're considering not just the quantity, but the quality of our stormwater, looking for a net improvement. This stormwater manual, the intention or the items in it, they define, have specific guidelines for new development to follow. Again, they include both hydraulic and water quality criteria, define methods of treatment to meet that and encourage low impact development. The major changes from existing to proposed that are in here, there is a change from the design storm of a 25-year, 24-hour duration storm to a 25-year, 3-day duration storm. This mimics, is just moving to mimic the requirements for ERP permitting with the South Florida Water Management District. And then again, adding to the hydraulic, the water quantity items, but also adding a water quality component to it as well.
Can I stop you there?
Yeah, sure.
Can you go back?
Yep.
Does that new design criteria, will that have an impact on any of the high-rises that are potentially being built on the ocean?
Any new development after this would be theoretically adopted would then need to comply, yes.
Because right now, most of those don't meet that 95% of all storm runoff, correct? And they have been receiving
No, they
exception?
require a variance out of
Variance on that one. Will this new change criteria, will they still require a variance?
Depends on the existing use of the property, so potentially not. If depending on the amount of impervious area and the current use of it, it may not.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. In conjunction with it, so that new single-family homes don't have to follow the same onerous, or not onerous, but the same requirements that a larger development would require. There's a residential guidelines that provide simplified requirements for a new or expanded single-family residential development. What's before you tonight is the code changes that would be needed in order to reference this, followed by, again, if approved on the first reading, would follow the second reading and a resolution to adopt the manual. This manual, I do want to say that the Environmental Advisory Committee was gracious enough to take the time to review it, allow me to present this. They had some specific comments that were all incorporated. They were very good comments. Some of those included prohibiting exfiltration trenches under village roads was a concern. Conflicts with other code sections were pointed out, specifically parking and the parking materials or surfaces, and some minor editorial changes. And again, all those were taken into account and incorporated into the draft versions that are before you tonight. And again, I already mentioned the next steps. So happy to answer any questions on the item.
Thank you, Matt. Any council comments or questions?
The work that you guys are doing in this regard is fantastic. The only question I have is when you talk about the water quality design criteria, and we talk about the 95% reduction in pollutant loads, I guess I'm scratching my head a little bit as to how exactly are we going to obtain that goal and determine that it has actually been achieved. I'm just, with the runoffs from different areas, what technology or what practices are available to us to get to that level of I'll call it purification of that stormwater runoff?
So I think there's a couple of components I think I'm hearing to that question. One is the demonstration, how you prove that from in the development side of it,
yeah.
The conceptual side of it. So what's spelled out in the manual is there isn't a single use this formula, but there are it leaves it a little bit open to be able to demonstrate that. The most common, which is referenced here, the most common, at least right now across the strait, is the I think it's BMP trains that was developed. The software developed through the University of Central Florida is the most common that's used around the state, but it's not exclusive to that means of demonstrating it. As far as the way of practically achieving it, that's where the methods of treatment that are mentioned in there come in, from wet detention to dry detention, and then specifically encouraging the low-impact development options to in order to achieve it, from pervious pavement to bioswales, things of that nature, exfiltration trenches, etc.
So my concern is when you use those kinds of techniques, aren't you just, the stormwater may run clear, but the contaminants are still in the soil. So over time, you know, how do we address that issue? I mean, we got sufficient water. Does go down into the sufficient water supply? I mean, you know, again, it's one thing to say, okay, the stormwater is going to be cleaner using those techniques, but all you've done is concentrated them in a basin or whatever. I guess.
Yeah. So there's different. There's obviously a variety of different types of pollutants. When you're talking about nutrients, those are, which is what this is specifically geared towards. Then there isn't the same. There isn't that concentration that you're referring to, because you have uptake from plants. You have aerobic and anaerobic actions going on within the soil. When you're talking about things like heavy metals, potentially from parking
cars
spaces,
and the road, and yeah.
Yep. Then those are areas where those are types of pollutants that you could see concentration. But this is specifically geared in the direction of nutrient reduction, not necessarily the specifically addressing those accumulating items.
Okay. Yeah, there was a reference in there to the roads and autos, and so you're right. I think the methods we're talking about are specific to the nutrients, but I'm thinking of the other materials that could be toxic. And are there any solutions to any of that at this point in time, or is that still just an open question?
So a lot of it, to be honest, is still kind of an open question. It's emerging. We drive vehicles that have brake pads that have things in them that are, that brake dust is not necessarily the most environmentally friendly items. We have oils and hydrocarbons that can drip from vehicles, and then we really have the industry here in Tequesta, but on industrial uses you can have large hazardous chemicals which aren't really too much at play here in our village, but elsewhere they are.
So this is geared towards controlling the things we know we can control with current methods, and some of those other things will wait till the future.
Yeah.
That's not a fair assessment?
It is.
Okay.
And some of those products are extremely expensive too, when you start putting them into the storm drain systems and you start filtering the storm water that goes through that system too. So there's and then sometimes there's a cleanup process that comes into play where annual vacuum truck comes in and vacuums out the nasty stuff. So
Mr. Hammond did bring this in front of the EAC to present this to them, and he got their feedback and took all that into account when he put this together as well.
Okay. Something I just want to point out, we kind of alluded to, it was in the introduction, that this manual does not address like water volume. It's strictly for dealing with pollutants. Is that correct, or did I misinterpret what was in the introduction?
It addresses both. So it does both quantity and quality. And I can go back quickly to the. Chairman? Oh, I'm sorry. Never mind. Jeremy's already jumped.
Yeah, I was like, what is it? It's page.
So slide 4.
It's on the introduction, page 2 of the introduction, I guess.
Talks about pre-development.
Says
pre-development.
The manual does have general criteria for water quantity and flood protection, but its main purpose is to provide guidelines related to control of stormwater generated pollution, and therefore is water quality based.
So, but there are hydraulic or quantity items in there, and those are the highlights of those are on the right hand side there, as far as controlling discharge to pre-development volume, the timing of the discharge to preclude off-site impacts, outside of the site, and then minimizing the peak discharge to less than the pre-development discharge rate. So those are specifically detailed out in the manual.
Great. And then just a quick question on the low impact development. I know Lake Park just got a good sized grant from DEO for a low impact green infrastructure. I was trying to find out exactly what they did. I couldn't find it online. Do you know what they did, and is that in our manual?
So they had they're a little bit apples and oranges, whereas this is this manual is for the new development. They have gone through a several-year process putting together a low-impact development stormwater master plan that they have put forward for grant funding for. So those are projects that are town projects that they are putting their dollars towards and getting grant matching dollars to implement. So those are a little bit of the differences. But I'm happy to reach out to Mr. D'Agostino and get a copy of that if the
Yeah, I'd be curious.
council would like. Yeah.
Any other council comments?
No.
Any public comments? Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, moving on to ordinance, agenda item 13, ordinance number 08-22, first reading.
This one's not quite as bad. Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 0822, an ordinance of the Village Council, Village of DeQuesta, Florida, amending the Code of Ordinances at Chapter 74 Utilities, Article 2 Water Service, Division 2 Rates and Charges by adding 2 entirely new sections, Section 7483 Connection Fee Payment Plan, to allow a connection fee financing agreement between a property owner and the village, and Section 7484 Voluntary Annexation Consent, to require properties located outside the municipal boundaries of the village which are served by the village's water utility to consent to voluntary annexation into the village when such annexation is available, providing that each and every other section, subsection of Chapter 74 shall remain in full force and effect as previously adopted, providing a conflicts clause, severability clause, authority to codify effective date, and for other purposes. This is first reading.
So this item was presented at the February 28th workshop and is being now presented for consideration for first reading. As Keith mentioned, it adds 2 new sections to the village code. The first of which is the connection fee financing plan. That remains the same, with the exception of implementing the request that the interest rate be tied to something. It's currently tied, or as it's presented to you now, it's tied to the 10-year T-bill plus 1%. The rest of it remains the same. The second section is voluntary annexation related to new service connections or upgraded service connections to properties that are specifically within unincorporated Palm Beach County. The language in that section remains unchanged from the workshop.
Okay, thank you. Council comments? No. I have a quick question on the connection fee. I know we talked about it a little bit at the workshop. Can you remind me what the average cost of a connection be and what the interest collected would be?
So the average connection fee is a little over $3,000. And then there's also the meter, called the tap fee for the physical connection. That's ranges from over $1,000 if there's has to be a tap to I think it's $500 if it's just the installation of a meter and there isn't a new tap that's needed. If a new customer chose to finance over the full 5-year term at the base or minimum 5% annual rate, then that would be in the ballpark of $735 of interest they would pay over that 5-year term.
Okay, yeah, I mentioned this at the workshop. I still think maybe reducing it to 3 years would be a little bit better since this, I think it's nice to help the residents, but 5 years just seems a bit long to me. And then one more question on the annexation. Does this preclude us to do any other annexation efforts down the road?
No, this would not impact separate and distinct efforts to annex areas. This would just be another way to get certain properties to annex in. And this, well, as with any annexation, this will only apply to properties in Palm Beach County. It will not, I mean, short of a significant change in state law, or a significant change in the boundary between Palm Beach and Martin County, this would not allow you to annex north of County Line Road at this time, no matter what.
Molly, you mentioned the term, but I think what we talked about was it'd be a maximum of 5 years, but if somebody wanted to pay it more quickly, they could. Are you saying you want them to pay it more quickly? Or were you concerned that they didn't have?
I think 3 years was more appropriate, just based on the cost. I mean, that's just my opinion.
The homeowner can select whether they want to do 1 year, 2 years.
Sure, yeah, of course they can.
Yeah. So 5 years, that's the outlier.
Okay, I was just thinking we would do 3 months, but yeah, gladly you can be overruled. Okay, any other council comments? Public comments?
We have Marcia Nielsen.
Marcia Nielsen, 94 Beechwood Trail. You know, I go to every workshop, and I missed this one, and I'm really sorry I did, because I'm kind of like in shock. So maybe you answered all these things at the workshop, and I have 5 questions, and so if so, they should go really fast. What other municipalities have this rule?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What other municipalities have this rule?
Oh, we've, off the top of my head, there are a number in Central Florida, Sebring, Lake Placid,
None in Palm
Avon
Beach
Park.
County.
I don't recall off the top of my head, but,
So if I choose not to have a $3,000 hookup fee and have to do this, my alternative is a well, correct? Okay. What about the properties that are not contiguous to the village?
so the annexation would only happen, first of all, the village wouldn't have to annex. It would be at the village's decision at such time as annexation became legally available. So if it was a property that was not contiguous or that had enclave issues, then it legally would not be able to be annexed until those issues were overcome, which may not be till years in the future. So in those situations, the way the ordinance is written, it would require the property owner to basically sign an agreement that we're not going to oppose annexation at such time as it becomes legally available, and I believe that would be recorded in the public records as an encumbrance
So
of
that would be
the
the
property.
annexation rules would imply, would come into.
Right, this can't supersede state law on whether a
Right.
property can be annexed, but this would say at such time that annexation became available, if the village wanted this property annexed in, this property owner would not oppose it.
But Marcia, just to touch on your first question, and Matt, you can tell me if I'm wrong. If somebody wants to hook up, they still have to pay the hookup fee.
Yeah,
So.
I'm just amazed that it's that much money,
Oh,
but that's my fault.
So, I mean, anybody would have to pay that fee regardless. It's just
Yes, I
saying-
understand that.
Yeah.
It has really nothing to do with the hookup fee,
Right,
this voluntary thing. I was just like, kind of amazed that it was that much. And I'm wondering how this is gonna work. So, say Riverside, which is, because Pat and I have done extensive, and we have buku files on annexation, all of which have failed. So, you know, this seems kind of like, first of all, it's not voluntary. You have to have water. Oh, okay.
Okay, any other public comments? Okay, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, moving on to item number 14, approval of the renewal of Palo Alto Advanced Security Services.
Marcia, if you want to stop by, I think you're in tomorrow. I can answer any questions that maybe you may have, and then if you have additional ones, you can bring it next month or whatever.
Good evening, council. Congratulations, Mayor Young, Councilman Johnson.
Thank you.
This is a renewal for existing gateway security services. It's an annual renewal, and it enables our firewalls to perform advanced security scanning of inbound and outbound traffic. That's it. It's pretty
Any
simple.
council comment?
This is in addition to another provider that we just set up last year, right? Didn't we?
Yeah, this is in addition to CrowdStrike. They perform different functions.
Okay.
They're equally important.
I think this is the one thing that came in under budget.
Yeah. I like to be that one guy.
Any public comments? No? Can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to any other matters. I'll go down the line. Mr. Johnson?
None.
Mrs. Brandon?
I'm good. Thank you.
Mr. Gamble?
Done this evening.
Vice Mayor Stone?
I'm going to add two things. Jeremy, can you use some of my discretionary fund to get a new clicker to move the stuff across the presentation?
Clicker was working, but we have two clickers. We had,
Doesn't that
we had
up's not
one
down?
clicker with the wrong thing in the computer. So once we got that straight, we were solid. So I don't think
It's not the clicker?
I don't think we need
Okay.
your discretionary fund
All right.
for that too. We'll be fine.
Second, Keith Davis did send that memorandum over, and we just got it on March 10th from Lori, so thank you for sending that over. There was one in there that I thought was really important, that I find that is really valuable to the council, and so I just want to put in the record, and that is former government D. That's the village charter specifically prohibits council members from interfering with the manager's administration of village operation. The council and its members shall deal with village employees solely through the manager, and neither the council nor its members shall give orders to any such official or employee, either publicly or privately. Violation of this can be grounds in legal action via a recall petition process. And then also in E, council members are not permitted to direct staff in the performance of their duties in any other manners whatsoever. Any such direction must instead be given to the manager, who will then determine the most appropriate manner in which to proceed, vice versa for village employees. I just think that chain of command is really, really important for all of us, and I just encourage us to abide by that.
I fully agree with that. It's very important.
Yep.
That's it.
Okay, I had a couple items. One of them, I've had some discussions with Keith last week about public notice for our DRC process. You know, it's in a lot of other municipalities, it's typical. There's a public notice process with signs posted at the site, mailers sent out to the neighborhoods, all that kind of stuff. You know, I think maybe our DRC process does not have that right now. So I think our DRC process was maybe fitting in the past, but we have a lot of new development coming in. It's probably not going to stop. So I was wondering if anyone want to workshop that to discuss in more detail, if we want to kind of evaluate that. And
Are we making that public record?
So I think, I think I put that in my weekly report last week, I believe, but the DRC now, after Mr. Davis's opinion, we are publicly noticing those moving forward, and we'll be taking minutes as well. So we'll be handling just like the sunshine and meet all the sunshine requirements for that. We haven't previously, but Mr. Davis has ruled that there was another legal opinion that you followed for that, right?
The way our DRC is structured, there are Attorney General opinions that, under that structure, with the authority that our committee has, that it should be run as a publicly noticed meeting. That being said, if the council wants to discuss that in more detail, you certainly can workshop that, and any other additional notice requirements that you thought were appropriate, depending on the direction that you give, that may or may not require a code change to the DRC process.
but the notice you're doing isn't like posting signs at the development site.
Right, I mean, you and I talked on the phone in terms of some places you'll see like a big yellow poster on the site that says the site being considered for such and such. No, we do not require that. To my knowledge, we don't do that.
That's what you're talking about.
Yeah, if we want to talk that in more discussion, then a separate matter is, you know, I know, I think North Palm Beach, they put a moratorium while they reviewed some specific codes. I don't know if that's anything we'd be interested in doing as well, because there are some things that we can do that don't infringe on property rights that might align with the vision of DeQuesta a little more. So just throwing it out there if anyone wants to workshop that stuff.
I'm more than welcome to have a conversation.
Sure.
Okay. And then one last item, can we get an update on the DeQuesta Park appropriation? Because I've seen some information floating around the public, and I want to make sure everyone's up to date on that.
Well, it is official, we are not getting money for Tequesta Park, it is not in the budget, and I think we're past that battleground, so there will be no appropriation for Tequesta Park. We heard that from Mr. Corey today.
Okay, that's all I have. All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Well, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
That was super quiet.
Short agenda.